Good afternoon, everyone. Let's kick off the ACLN online workshop. I'm Kim Soo-hyun of ACLN Secretariat. Nice to see you all.
오늘 워크숍 행사에는 동시 통역 서비스가
Simultaneous interpretation is provided for this workshop. Please set language on the menu underneath. Korean, English, Chinese, and Japanese are the 4 languages that are provided for this workshop, and participants use different language. That's why you need to set your own language, and the interpretation set is off when you log into Zoom. So please set your desired language, and please turn off the original sound. Otherwise, you will hear both the speaker sound and the interpretation. Let's hear from welcoming remarks of Kang Soo-kyung, Secretary General.
Good afternoon. I am Kang Soo-kyung, Secretary General of the Asia Cruise Leaders Network. Nice to meet you all, and welcome to the online workshop. It's been almost 2 years since we haven't seen each other face-to-face due to the pandemic. I'm glad that we get to see each other at least in an online platform today. Since last year, the cruise industry is faced with unprecedented challenge. All cruises around the world has stopped their operation. The total loss is estimated at more than $100 billion around the world. To date, the industry is incurring substantial cost to resume operation. How quickly and systematically we overcome this crisis is our imminent challenge. On the bright side, the Asian cruise industry has quickly handled the situation compared to other regions. Taiwan started its hopping tour last July, and the rest of Asia, including Singapore and Japan, are resuming their operations. There is continuous effort for systematic infection prevention measures to ensure safe marine tours. However, if such effort is limited to a certain region or certain country, we cannot deliver complete cruise tours to our customers. What we need right now is to establish thorough national infection prevention system, create travel bubbles, and restore mutual trust. We need to operate the entire Asian cruise industry network based on mutual trust and cooperation. Many have joined us today at the ACLN workshop, including RCI, Genting Cruise Line, and participants from China, Japan, Singapore, Russia, Germany, Australia, and Korea. Today's workshop, the largest number of participants from the Asian cruise industry showed up today. I have received many messages and comments from the members while preparing for today's event. Such interest and support demonstrate how the industry desperately needed a platform for mutual cooperation and information exchange. I hope today's workshop will serve as a stepping stone for us to overcome the challenge together and enhance solidarity and cooperation of the Asian cruise industry. The ACLN will do its utmost to usher in an age of new normal in the cruise industry together with all its members. Lastly, I'd like to thank all speakers and Kim Wee-gun, the former ACLN Secretary General, panelists, and participants. And my special thanks goes to the Jeju local government and all staff, and Mr. Lee Myung-chul, the president of Jeju Cruise Industry, for all your administrative support. Thank you. Thank you for your remark. And from now on, we'd like to start the ACLN online workshop in order to overcome the COVID-19 crisis. and find the solutions. We will start the first session, and the moderator is Kang Soo-kyung. Hello, everyone. Without further ado, I'd like to move on to the session 1. I am Kang Soo-kyung. I'm the moderator for the first session. So the first session is a venue where we invite speakers to touch upon the latest challenges for our industry in the Asian cruise industry. We have a total of 6 speakers for today, and we will touch upon the countries and cases where they have resumed their operations, and they will also share some trends for the organizations which are preparing for their resumption of operation. And let me start the first. I invite the first speaker, Mr. Jinan Liu of Royal Caribbean Cruise. Dr. Jinan Liu has joined the Royal Caribbean Cruise since 2009, contributing to the success of Chinese cruise market of RCI. At the moment, he is serving as the president of the Asia Cruise Association and CLIA North Asia. Today, he will talk about the health resumption of cruise industry in Northeast Asia.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you, Professor Kang. And also thank you, the ACLN, to organize this truly Asia cruise event. This is the very first. I think in history, we will all remember this is the very first Asia cruise event to trigger the restart of the industry in the region. So I'm glad to have this opportunity to give a brief talk. I'm going to touch upon the 2 topics. One is I want to give everybody a quick update for the restart process in all over the world. And I would briefly talk about the protocol of the cruise lines undertake to prevent submission and spread of the virus and to ensure the health of the public. And secondly, I would like to briefly talk about the restart of the cruises industry in this region. I have some suggestion for the pathway. So let's move on to the first topic. We know that the Diamond Princess, the incident, has created a very negative impression on people and government. But 1 year on, when we reassess this incident, we will see that it is a misconception to think that cruise ships are not safe, right? It is basically the shows that the weakness of humankind, not the particular weakness of the cruise ship or the industry. And the people argue that the cruise ship has a very the limited space and the high density of people gathering. But in this world, there are many venues like a school, like the shopping center, like airplanes, the theme parks, and etc. They are spacious. They are not spacious. And actually, after Diamond Princess, one city after another, one country after another fell down, because that before the advent of the vaccines. Without vaccines, the humankind is very weak, and we can only lock down ourselves to prevent the attack of the unknown virus. As long as we are well prepared, we have an emergency response plan in place, then we can ensure cruise ship can be one of the safest places in the planet. So restart process started from last year, as the chair already mentioned, in Taiwan and in Singapore. So let's look at the largest cruising region, North America market, that the CDC already agreed with the cruise line industry, with a clear that from the summer, the revenue sailing will restart it. So we expect by the end of this year, with the progress of the vaccine in the US, by the end of this year, we believe that the cruise industry can be more or less recovered. This is very important for the whole cruise industry, because the North America basically is the largest cruise market, regional market in the world, which is larger than second largest regional market, Europe, twice as large as this, and the third largest market is APAC, which is Europe is as twice as much as large as the North APAC region. So in Europe, we know that in Italy, Germany, the cruises already restarted from last summer. It goes well. It paused for a while because of the rise of the cases, but now they resume the cruises again. It is not only the domestic cruises; it is basically international cruises calling the overseas destinations. And I think in UK that the people expect it will restart in July. In Israel, it will restart in May, and in Greece and Cyprus, it will restart in June. And in Asia, we know Taiwan, we know Japan, we know Singapore, and in Hong Kong, I expect and people believe that they will restart in July this year. So restarted progress everywhere, and we cannot say there is no single case that occurred on one of the restarted cruises, but there is no Diamond Princess incident happen again. There is nothing not under control, right? I think that our objective is not to achieve the zero risk. There's no such a thing in the world as zero risk. As long as we can control the risk to the acceptable level, that's good enough. So quickly, I think the Raymond from the Genting can also talk about this because they started earlier than Royal in Singapore. So quickly, that since November 2020. There are already 106 sailings, probably more than 108 sailings, because this PPT is prepared several days ago. Already took place, and there are in total 146,000 guests sailed on the cruise nowhere sailings. And there's no positive case of COVID-19 that occurred on both Genting or Royal ships. Even there are one case or two cases, that doesn't mean that the cruise to nowhere restarting is not successful, as long as we can control the risk. I want to quickly go through the process that how Singapore government assist and help the international cruise lines to restart. This is a very professional government and authority. They reach out to the international cruise lines, help cruise lines in touch with the Singapore Medical Authority to get the cruise lines protocol approved. So basically, that we don't need to talk to the medical authority directly. STB, representing the Singapore government as a bridge for communication between cruise lines on the one hand, and the medical authority on the other hand. And they basically, during the preparing the restart process, the following the issues has been examined carefully. One is the safety management measures and the compliance, the cruise safe certificate. Basically, on the basis of the evaluation of the protocols to be taken by the cruise lines, a certificate as such will be issued. And secondly, we'll talk about the crew movement, because crew movement can cause the imported risk into Singapore. So there need to be a very stringent the testing and the quarantine process. And thirdly, this is down. I mean, you still need to do the regular routine testing on the crew, because they are exposed to the passengers, and so they need to be tested and quarantined, tested, and this is basically learning from Diamond Princess, right? You need to have a surveillance, you need to have a monitoring system before it's too late. Now, of course, it's a crew shall leave. When the crew left the ship after finishing their contract, that how do they leave from Singapore, and what need to be done together with airlines, the procedures, the quarantine, testing, this all need to be looked after. And of course, the passenger testing. I think Singapore authority, STB, proposed the pre-boarding test and also after-boarding test, right, to prevent the introduction of the virus from the shore to the ship, then preventing the introduction of this virus from ship to shore. Basically, if you cut out these two links, there is no risk, right? And of course, there is also reporting system, right, and information system in order to manage the whole situation. And there are also provisioning project, because ship provision also provide a potential path for the risk, right? Through the container, through the food, frozen food. So relevant measures need to be taken on this side. So STB has a very comprehensive professional process that have led to the successful start of a restart process. It's truly a partnership collaboration. And I understand that this Cruise to Nowhere in Singapore also has a support from Singapore government for the tax issues, because this could be another issues, right? That so international cruise lines are treated very well and on these tax issues. Then on the port side, also the measures need to be taken, right? So the ship registry, the DNB has been appointed as the safety auditor. So we need to have a third party, right? Apart from a cruise line, apart from port, apart from STB, need a third party to supervise this and give advice. And also the constructing the compliance auditing and including documents review, onboard inspections to ensure there are systems and measures in place for safe cruisings. There are also the trial cruises and attended by the STB, by the DNV, by other government authorities. So it's a well-conducted process. And the Singapore STB and DNV also integrates industry standard from global institutes such as WHO and CLEAR, and also the CIP requirements, which is the Singapore requirements, because the integration is a big job, right? Is a big job. So STB conduct this together with conduct this process to ensure that the general public, media, and the government authority have a peace of mind. So this is a very quick update for the Singapore, the process for restart. And it's set a good example for restart in other countries. And Raymond can add more meat for this. And now let's have a look at a short video of the Quantum of the Sea, the process on board. It's not a marketing video. It's a real life video, and intend to give people the real picture of how the cruise line operate during this period.
码头登船，游客可在登船前72小时内完成在线直船。 无纸化登船，游客抵达码
the
头
Quantum of the
时，
Sea
会使用移
resumed
动
its
端
operation in
家
Singapore.
可以办理在线
Online
直
app
船手续，
check-in,
获得船票以及健康、安全等相关信
the
息。
boarding at the terminal. Passengers can check in online 72 hours prior to boarding. boarding e-ticket. When passengers arrive in the terminal, they can check in using a mobile app of Royal Caribbean and issue an electronic ticket. They also receive safety and hygiene-related information. COVID-19 test. All passengers must be tested for COVID-19 before boarding a ship. Those who have tested negative can board the ship in an orderly manner after checking body temperature at the terminal. And they take body temperature before boarding after arriving at the gate and carry out wellness screening before boarding. During the boarding procedure, we check the body condition of passengers and take their body temperature for the second time. And on board the ship e-muster drill, instead of a collective muster drill, a safe individual e-muster drill is provided. Passengers can watch us safe in the cabin for 30 minutes. And sufficient space is secured for safe social distancing. We have put a restriction in the number of users and installed visible signs to disperse passengers to ensure safe social distancing. Also, passengers can make a reservation online. The medical center is around 24 hours and it is divided infection zone. It consists of regular patients' room, emergency rooms, and intensive board. The COVID-19 test equipment to quickly screen. Intensive cleaning and disinfection services provided to safe to avoid any blind spots. Professional cabin service staff carry out cleaning and disinfection twice every day. Medical disinfectant is used when cleaning the surface of the areas where frequent contact occurs. Before starting the next cruise, all rooms are thoroughly cleaned and sanitized. Users of onboard entertainment facilities will be restricted by being allotted to different time slots. Temperature will be checked at the entrance. Also, a sign will be installed to inform passengers of social distancing. After each time slot, the area will be disinfected. Announcements on COVID-19 prevention guidelines will be made regularly in public places. Safety signs will be installed to reinforce social distancing. The users of swimming pools, sunbeds, and massage pools will be restricted to 50% of the regular number of permitted users. In addition, staff will be stationed in each area for prevention and control activities. When entering indoor activity facilities, passengers in line with the guidelines. Stickers will be placed on the floor of all distancing guidelines. After use, the facilities will be disinfected. To enjoy performance percent of the seats will be available. Passengers need to check temperatures at the entrance. Crews will instruct the empty seats. After the performance, crews will sanitize the hall using an electronic disinfectant at the entrance of a restaurant, which is reservation only. The movement of passengers will be restricted in one direction. No self-service is available at the dishes instead. Each seat and table is placed. Carry out thorough disinfection on the tables and seats.
Okay, this slide. So I think this presentation can be distributed among the audience. Then you can look at it about the HAV system, which is one of the critical issues regarding the safety. I want to quickly move on to the next topic, and that is how we should restart in this region. I mean, in Northeast Asia, So next year is the 30 years, and let's talk about lift the ban on the cruises from China, which this is totally unreasonable. And I think of course, this ban is imposed from here. Communicate with the Chinese government on this issue. This is good of the 30th anniversary of the two countries. I think as a first step of resuming normal cruises, that is a restart of with a technical call on the Korean, have a technical call on the Korean ports as a means of Q4. Then we paved the way for resuming normal cruises between this year. So technical is Incheon, Jeju, or Busan without actual landing. No crew, no guests. Korean ports embark. And there is no without exchange of the goods and between ship and shore, so that the ship will dock the outside the Korean ports in the dock the anchorage or other designated area without entering the port and completing the clearance process, and then so we have a presence in Japanese ports historically. For instance, in 20th Jeju and Busan, but we can't change our itinerary, so we all received. And we've also done this through the team that we made a technical call on Incheon and the Busan out. And I think the only concern from Korea's central government, because we believe the Korean port of the concern maybe from a central government is that for the onboard the ship. So what can be done, and this will put the Korean government. Then the public health is exposed. If they don't rescue, then they suffer this humanity the issue. But so what we want to say that if we are approved to restart by the Chinese authorities, then we will have, that is, if some cases happen, what need to be done on ship, what need to be done by the home port. We will quickly return to the home port and to do all the necessary evacuation, testing, quarantine, and treatment, rather than asking to come to the rescue. So we can give this undertaking. So there's no risk. We will make sure our ship is one of the safest beach. And thank you very much. Mute. Unmute.
Mr. Jian Yu has talked about the Royal Caribbean quarantine and infection prevention processes and how they can resume its operations. Actually, last year and this year, we have so unprecedented. We can promote that it is very safe as a promotional material to
Yes, and next, Lim. The Senior Vice President resumed cruise operations after COVID-19. He oversees planning and port management for our business in China. And today, he will talk about the success story cruise line to resume operations after COVID-19. Please, Mr. Lim.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My apologies. Something wrong with my sharing. Give me 1 minute. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, distinguished Genting Cruise Line. I'm excited and truly honored to participate. Genting Cruise Line has been operating in Asia since 1993, and this year marks our massive development in cruise tourism in the region. COVID-19 has caused tremendous impact of our unprecedented scale to the travel industry around the world. Now, with the cruise industry taking the biggest hit, fortunately for Genting Cruise Line, we have been able to commence some of our operations in Singapore and Taiwan, becoming the first cruise line in Asia, and some say in the world, to start cruising. That's the impacts of COVID-19 and has had on the industry, and share with you some of our Genting Cruise Line experience, thoughts on the new norm for post-COVID-19 cruises. Now, lastly, I would also like to highlight the challenges that we faced during the resumption process, and to share what key stakeholders, such as travel agencies and etc., should know about cruise resumption under the new norm. Yeah, the US cruise industry has suffered losses of up to US suspension. Now, studies also show that the total loss $100 billion. In addition, due to the such as refunds to the customers, change of itineraries, as well as berthing of cruise ships during the operational downtime. Now, for Genting, since the end of January in 2020, with over 204 financial challenge, the company had to take measures to trim down. Indeed, in the crisis, it has also provided us with the opportunity in business models and potentially create new preventive measures to keep up with the new norm post-COVID-19. Run this new challenge from a position of strength attributed to set new standards for not just the fleets, but also reinforce the training of our crew members to provide them with multi-skills. Now, in April 2020, our Star Cruises ship entered new waters as the first cruise ship in the world. Singapore government to provide temporary accommodations. With the experience gained from the dormitory projects, we became the only uniquely equipped for first-hand COVID-19 pandemics history, when Explorer Dream became the first cruise ship to resume on itinerary in Taiwan on July 26. To date, we have complete guests. The deployment has been well received by the local market, caught with zero COVID-related incident. Now, in response to the overwhelming, the company has now launched brand new Discover Taiwan cruise from Keelung to Anping in Tainan, Penghu, the Milky Sea that surrounds Guishan Islands in Yilan and Keelung. Now, for our other vessels, World Dream, we commenced our deployment on 6 November 2020 in Singapore and have completed 69 successful cruises carrying over nearly 89,000 passengers, and working with the authorities at least 4 months before conceptualizing a plan. Currently, World Dream itinerary is cruising to the South China Sea and Malacca Straits without a destination, but we look and we will comply with requirements in order to provide destination for the first cruise line in the world to work with DMV, world leading class in infection prevention, maritime, or in short, CIPM for the maritime industry. Now, this certification aims to help the maritime industry and to set new safety standards for the cruise industry management and impose stringent controls for new sign-on crew, and especially crew from high-risk areas joining us. Now, we have implemented a strict 14 days quarantine in the hotel with 2 swab tests before the sign-on crew can board their flights. Now, crew are also being trained on safe management measures, and we do daily temperature checks and require all crew to wear masks on board at all times. We are currently also working with the local government and also service provider to look at vaccine for the crew where we are currently home ported. Now, we have implemented higher frequency and increased level of sanitization from cabins to public area with thorough cleansing, fogging, and wiping using hospital-grade disinfectant, emphasizing on frequent touch point. Now, we have sanitizer readily available at all outlets and also compulsory temperature screening before passengers can enter any of the outlets and facilities. Now, there's a need to constantly educate the public that our ships are built with 100% external fresh air filtered and supplied to each guest cabin and onboard public area with no recirculation of air. Air filters and cooling coils are thoroughly checked, cleaned, and replaced to ensure healthy air quality. And the air circulation on board is actually safer compared to many shore entertainment complexes. Our shipboard medical facilities are equipped with COVID-19 testing capabilities with 2 doctors, including an infection control officer. Isolation wards and cabin can be converted for quarantine purposes if there's a large outbreak on board. Now, with the start of cruises, now cruise line will have to make certain adjustment to operating profits, and definitely one of which is the reduction of total capacity to allow for better social distancing and management of guest capacity within the onboard facilities. We have also implemented a pre-boarding COVID-19 test so that passengers are tested before the cruises, and to minimize contact between ship crew and guests. We also have started bill settlement via quick pay apps and requiring pre-reservation for specialty dining and spa, and extending the meal timing so that guests can enjoy the facilities at ease. We also hired cruise ambassadors to constantly remind and ensure that guests conform to social distancing and national safe management measures. And using wearables such as Tracy, a new tracking innovation from our IT team, which will provide warnings to passengers if they are standing too close to each other. An outbreak prevention response plan has been put in place, and the ships conduct regular drills with authorities and shore officials to ensure plans are updated and validated. Onboard contact tracing capabilities, which I've highlighted earlier, also include the tap-in-out function, MySpot and Trace Together tokens, and will allow us to have a good tracing record of our guests if required. Now, for a closer look at the new norm of cruising, let's use World Dream deployment in Singapore as an example. Prior to check-in at the terminal, we require all guests to complete online check-in and also to download the Trace Together app, which is a mandatory requirement from the local government. Now, upon arrival at the terminal, passengers are required to perform an on-site COVID-19 antigen test outside the terminal building. The results are normally ready within an hour, and passengers will be asked to wait at the resting area. Passenger with a negative test result will proceed into the terminal for check-in. Passengers with a positive test result will be refused check-in, and we will also not allow any close contact traveling with the passenger to cruise. During check-in, passenger will be issued a Tracy wearables tracking device so that we can keep track of the passenger's location for easy contact tracing. Now, on board the ship, all passengers when in public area will be asked to wear a mask and maintain social distancing. Our facilities such as the swimming pool and gym will need to be pre-booked for use, and we have limits on the number of people that can use the pool and gym at all times. Restaurant seating capacity will follow local government requirement as per shore facilities. With COVID-19, the industry needs to be aware that to resume cruises, there will be new challenges that we have not experienced pre-COVID. Now, I listed out the following challenges, namely long lead time, higher startup costs, vaccine requirement for crew and guests, requirements for COVID-19 tests, and more stringent local government protocol. Now, in the past, when we start a new deployment at the home port, we may just need 3 months in advance planning until deployment. However, in this new COVID-19 era, our lead time will likely be more than half a year, with at least 3 months addressing crewing needs, including quarantine requirement, vaccines, and visa issues, and also getting the ship into top ship shape after being in laid up mode. With the above, definitely there will be a higher startup cost, as we will need to facilitate the quarantine requirements for crew, getting spares needed and making the necessary logistic adjustment based on local government requirement for preventive measures. Now, with vaccinations program ongoing around the world, crew will now be required to be vaccinated before they can start serving on board, and passengers will also need to show proof of their vaccination before they cruise with us. Once borders open up for travel around the world, we anticipate this will become a norm, as we can see from some proposed travel bubble between countries with this requirement. Testing prior to cruises will become a norm for a long while, and this will need to be factored in the planning process in terms of costing and ticket pricing. Now, every city or country will have their own preventive requirements, and cruise line will need to work closely with the home port and destination ports, where they will be calling to ensure that there are no breaches to safety and also passengers' comfort. Now, with COVID-19, cruise line now need to work closer with authorities and stakeholders, especially stakeholders in the medical industry, who now play a crucial role in the cruise line planning process. Now, local government will now dictate and give clearer direction in terms of how the phased resumption of cruises will be worked out. Cruise line will need to conduct drills and trial voyages with the authorities prior to the deployment to ensure that all gaps are ironed out prior to the deployment. Working closely with authorities such as medical institutions is now a key to successful operation. For example, in Taiwan, we have doctors with expertise in infectious disease cruising on board the ship to advise on our ship preventive measures and how they can be improved. Ship will now be equipped with COVID test kit and work with shore laboratories to get accreditation so that our results are recognized by the local authorities. Now, to wrap up, we at Genting Cruise Line remains optimistic that the growth in cruise tourism will continue, particularly in Asia, after the pandemic is over, and that cruise lines should take this opportunity during the standstill period to fine-tune their process for a new norm of operations. Authorities should work closely with the cruise line to work out a win-win situation so that resuming cruise could benefit the cruise industry and local tourism. Now, instead of constantly avoiding the topic of COVID-19 and cruises, the world has to realize that existence of COVID-19 will be here to stay, and we just have to work out a new norm in how we operate cruises so that we can coexist. Lastly, we would like to extend our sincere gratitude and appreciation once again for this invitation. We wish the forum great success and for all guests and participants the most rewarding and enjoyable time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senior Vice President Raymond Lim. Can you hear me well?
So,
Genting Cruise Line, together with LCI, has carried out the cruise line operation resumption, and like he's actually shared the success story, but there have been challenges for sure, and Genting Cruise Line's success story can be a helpful case example for other cruise lines. And let me move on to the third presentation.
So in Asia, Singapore is one of the leading countries which are providing a political and governmental support to help cruise lines resume their operations. As third presenter will be Director Antigen from Singapore Tourism Board. Director Cheng has contributed to the development of Singapore cruise industry and to enhance its ecosystem. She will touch upon resumption of safe cruise in Singapore. Ms. Cheng?
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation to attend this forum. It's my pleasure to share with you a little bit of our experience when it comes to cruising out of Singapore. I think Dr. Liu and Raymond has talked a lot about what is going on with respect to cruising in Singapore. So I think I will go through my slides pretty fast. Please bear with me while I load up the slides. Are you able to see the slides?
No, we cannot.
You can't see the slides?
We cannot.
Okay, let me just load it up again. Are you able to see the slides now?
Yes, we can. We can see your screen now.
Okay, great. So what I'll be sharing today is really to give an update on the global cruise resumption landscape, Singapore's experience thus far, and how we are preparing for the next phase. So I think a lot has been said about the developments of cruising in Asia and the world, so I won't go through that. To date, the Singapore has done more than 90 sailings. In fact, I think the latest update is more than 100 already. The numbers keep rolling, and we contribute to a third of the global cruise volume. But we recognize also that that is really because cruising has not started in the mature destinations like the Caribbean and Europe, Australia, China as well. So we've all recognized that there's a strong pent-up demand for cruising globally. In Singapore, what we've seen is a lot of first-time cruisers because borders have closed, and this is good news for us actually, to introduce the concept of cruising to people who would otherwise never have thought that they will want to go on a cruise with their family. So I'm going to share a little bit about our resumption journey thus far. It has gotten a lot of attention from local as well as global media. Well, Singapore piloted short round-trip cruises with no port of calls on board the World Dream in November 2020 and Quantum of the Seas in December 2020. So some of the key features of this, we call it a cruise pilot. That is only for Singapore residents, domestic cruising, no port of calls, reduced capacity of 50%, and mandatory cruise safe certification for all the ships, which I think Dr. Liu and Raymond has spoke a lot about. We have thus far received very encouraging public sentiments on cruising. In fact, I think when we first started, we had some journalists who were saying that it is not a good idea. I think we have put some of these concerns to rest in terms of our robust protocols. So the three key factors for cruise resumption in Singapore, we see it as really the Safe Cruise Protocol framework, which we call it Cruise Safe. We have very strong support from the government agencies within Singapore and the commitment and cooperation from all the stakeholders involved. If I can go into cruise safe certification, a lot has already been said. So Singapore is really the first country in the world to develop this cruise safe certification. It incorporates global and local health standards. Very importantly, we make it relevant to what is our prevailing requirements on land, and we mirror it to cruising standards. If we look at it, it's really from 7 aspects. But example, infection control measures, 100% fresh air circulation, there must be emergency response plans and safe management measures. One of the things that we did before we resumed cruising was to have trial sailings, for which we did tabletop exercises as well as field simulation on board. And the simulation would have, say, a COVID plus inject, and to see how the ship has prepared for such a incident. So some of the safe management measures that we have under the cruise safe certification, it's mandatory pre-boarding COVID-19 testing. The ships also have to demonstrate regular sanitization and cleaning protocols using hospital-grade materials. The cruise lines also have worked to incorporate technology to monitor physical distancing and contact tracing. And there's a lot of SMMs, we call it SMMs in short, which means safe management measures at entertainment and dining venues. The second key factor for cruise resumption is really the strong support and collaboration with other government agencies within Singapore. I think in this manner, we are blessed in the way we are structured. So Singapore Tourism Board is really the champion for the cruise industry. We are the one-stop shop for the cruise lines. In preparing for this cruise resumption, the cruise lines had to basically communicate with one party, which is Singapore Tourism Board. And the STB will then bring in all the other agencies who are relevant to support this. Once we got approval from our cabinet, our Singapore government on cruising to start, everybody, all hands were on deck. So everybody was just very focused on making sure that it's a success. So we had the Ministry of Trade and Industry supporting the cruise resumption with grants, for example. We had the Maritime Port Authority that makes sure that the maritime regulations are adapted to cruisers. We also had, I think one of the most important partners that we have is really our Ministry of Health. We worked very closely with our Ministry of Health, even up to today, to make sure that the health and hygiene protocols are continually reviewed, and what is being implemented on land is it has to mirror with what is happening on the ships, but it also has to be relevant. The other party that we work very closely with is our Immigration Authority that makes sure that the cruise crew that are flying in to work on board the ship, there is a tight process to make sure that everybody that comes through or out of Singapore in supporting this cruise resumption are taken care of. Of course, we also have our GovTech, which looks at the technology for safety measures reporting as well as contact tracing data. Third, it's really the commitment and cooperation from the cruise stakeholders. So obviously, we worked very closely with Genting Cruise Lines and Royal Caribbean. The terminal operator is actually very, very important as well. So SETS Cruise is the party here. They were turning miracles after miracles. For example, when we had to resume cruising, one of the requirements was to make sure that testing happens before boarding. So the terminal operator had to be really, really creative in looking at the space there is in the terminal and how to turn it into a COVID test swab ops to test passengers before they go up. And then previously we had this requirement that all passengers who debark from the ship has to be tested as well. But the testing facility cannot be the same as the testing facility prior to boarding. So if you look at the Marina Cruise Center today, there are two different places where testing is being done, one for pre-boarding and one for post-sailing. The terminal operator really had to be very creative in carving out spaces to make sure that this is done. The other thing is the terminal operator had to, because of COVID, we don't want a lot of people congregating at the terminal, for example. Pre-COVID days, the terminal would be very, very busy on sailing days. But right now, what happens is the moment a passenger comes to cruise, the passenger has to be ushered as fast as possible to the ship. If that cannot be done, the passenger would have to be turned away, or the passenger will have to be shuttled to another different place before boarding time. In terms of debarkation, there is a strict protocol. The cruise lines have to work with us to stagger the debarkation. Then the terminal operator will take over and make sure that from the time the passenger leaves the cabin to the time the passenger goes to the taxi to take a cab out of the terminal is as short a time as possible. So before COVID, the timing was about 20 to 30 minutes. During COVID now, from the ship cabin to the taxi is sometimes can be as short as 5 to 10 minutes, which is great. And we also work very closely with the ground support, our ground handlers and port agents in terms of the ever-evolving requirements and protocols. This is really the third part that I want to talk about. It's about cruising into the future. We believe that the growth potential of cruise in Asia remains exceptionally high. We've seen reports after reports. I think personally, we have also witnessed the fact that there really are a lot of people who want to travel, and where borders are restricted, now that they have tried cruising, they are pretty amenable to that as an alternative leisure option. We need to continually to stay updated on the COVID-19 situation and adjust our safety and health measures on board the ships, as well as to continue to monitor the results of this cruise pilot as we open up progressively. So what Singapore Tourism Board is doing, besides supporting the cruise lines in their cruise resumption and the daily operations, is really to keep the cruise travel agents engaged and ready to gear up when cruising returns. It's not only the travel agents in Singapore, it's also the travel agents in the region. In fact, I just heard that in Singapore, because of borders restrictions and inbound and outbound is not great. For some of the travel agents, selling cruise packages can amount up to 90% of their revenue currently. So it's very, very important for us to keep this going. And then what we do is also to work with the Cruise Line International Association to conduct training webinars to rebuild cruising demand, to strengthen consumers' confidence to cruise again. But importantly, it's really to update the travel agents on the latest safety protocols and measures. We recognize that cruising is really a regional product. You can do cruise to nowhere only for that amount of time. After a while, even if you want to attract repeat cruisers, because borders continue to remain closed, for example, there needs to be an attractive itinerary somehow. So ships do eventually have to sail around Southeast Asia ports and call into other places and other destinations. And so we recognize that it's very important for Southeast Asia ports to be able to implement health and safety measures that are aligned with what we have. So at least when we have port of calls, there is assurance, not only in the home port, but in the port of calls as well, that there is a certain level of hygiene and safety protocols that is consistently being practiced. Singapore, as the cruise lead coordinator for cruise in ASEAN, we are working very closely with our Southeast Asia governments. So we are talking to some of the countries that are popular with cruising to support them in the reopening of their ports. So as we work together, we believe that cruising can resume safely in Asia, and whatever has happened in the past that has generated negativity on cruising, we can definitely reverse that. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie Cheng, for your insightful presentation. So while she was making presentation, I think my screen was popped up at some point. Sorry about that. So to resume our operations of the cruise lines, the role of the cruise lines and terminal operators are important, but the role of the government and administrative support is also important. So the cooperation between different governments in the region is needed to create travel bubbles, and I hope that day will come soon. And without further ado, we will move on to the next presenter.
Yeah, so this country spares no effort to resume cruise trip, Japan. And Tanaka Saburo, the Deputy Director General of Japan Cruise Research Institute, will give a presentation. He worked for a Japanese cruise line, and currently he is engaged in various survey and research on cruises and the promotion of cruises in Japan and East Asia. Tanaka Saburo, please, the floor is all yours. Could you share your screen? Hello, everyone. I'm Tanaka Saburo. Wait a sec, Mr. Zabro, your PowerPoint slides are not being shared smoothly. But we can see the presentation material as well. But do you see it in the full screen? Yes. Yeah, then it's okay. I think there is an issue with my computer. Thank you everyone for participating in ACLN workshop. Hello, I'm Tanaka Sabro. Japan Cruise Research Institute is located in Japan, and I'm working for the Japan Cruise Research Institute, and it would have been really nice if we meet one another in person and network with each other, but due to COVID-19, we are having a virtual workshop. Still today, I'd like to talk about the cruise situation in Japan. So first, I will talk about the COVID-19 situation in Japan. So the first patient was identified in January last year, and on the left side of this graph, as you are aware, the Diamond Princess cruise, which was berthing in Yokohama port, saw cluster outbreak, and that was about like February 5th, and out of the all passengers there, 31 people got infected with COVID-19. And out of 3,712, about 700 were confirmed of COVID-19, and the COVID-19 infection rate was about 19%. And on March 1st, all the passengers and crews of Diamond Princess got disembarked. And at that time, the total number of COVID-19 patients in Japan were 254. So, but Diamond Princess already saw 712 COVID-19 patients. So it was really serious. And it left an impression that cruise ships are vulnerable to virus infection. And that's why Japan's cruise industry was largely hit by this Diamond Princess infection. And on January 7th this year, there were about daily new cases of 500. And here, it's marked in red color. So from January 7th to March 18th this year, Japan declared emergency for the second time. And currently, COVID-19 is still spreading. And the daily new cases, there are really a lot of new daily cases. Japanese government is taking a few measures to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And let me talk about the procedures for resuming domestic cruises by Japanese ships. The sound, we're losing the sound. Okay, the cruise industry formulated infectious disease prevention ship guidelines together with Japan Ocean-Going Passenger Ship Association. Each shipping company formulated an infectious disease prevention manual in accordance with industry guidelines, and also checked if the content of the shipping company manual followed the industry guidelines. So the cruise industry, which I'm referring to, Japan Ocean-Going Passenger Ship Association, formulated the guidelines, as I said before. And each shipping company checked whether the content of the shipping company manual follows the industry guidelines. And then the shipping company and the receiving port held a council to consider calling. Sorry, I think there are technical glitches and the sound is breaking. So they conducted infection prevention response training and then resumed cruise. So Japanese ships were able to resume domestic cruises recently. And next slide. The public health offices cooperated with cruise lines to conduct drills. And I organized that drill in this slide. So it's the example from Covet port. There was a phone call from a passenger on board in the onboard medical office saying that he had symptoms of new coronavirus infection. This was the situation simulated. Okay, so first a passenger passenger calls and says that he has a symptom of COVID-19. And then the captain canceled all the events and dining on board, and all passengers were asked to return to their rooms and waited. And the physician conducted a PCR test. And based on the test result, the person was tested positive, so he was isolated in the isolation room. And the captain notified the Kobe City Port Authority of the outbreak. And the captain identified close contacts and isolated them in the isolation room, and the head office decided to cancel the cruise. The Port Authority submitted a report to Kobe City Public Health Center. And the Public Health Center conducted interview with the confirmed patient and close contacts via phone. And the Port Authority started preparations for passenger disembarkation procedures. And after berthing, the confirmed patient and close contacts were guided by the doctor and descended to the quay and waited. Yeah, I am moving on to number 10. So other passengers disembarked using the boarding bridge. Based on this procedure, we conducted drills, and the cruise line, the port, and the public health office were able to cooperate seamlessly. So the drill was very effective. And next slide. So I went through each procedure or each process of drills. And now I will talk about the current status of cruise industry in Japan and what will be like in the future. So as I said, domestic cruise by Japanese ship, the cruise operation was resumed in October last year, but still the Japanese public are very much afraid of the possible COVID-19 infection on board because of Diamond Princess case. So the cruise lines resumed operation, but still they are finding it very difficult to attract customers. So many cruise lines are sometimes forced to cancel the event or suspend operation again. About 1/3 of cruise lines that resumed operation had to suspend operation again. So, and this is the future outlook. The domestic cruise of Japanese ships. As I said before, this domestic cruise was resumed, but not all Japanese cruise lines were able to do so. And international cruise by Japanese ship so inbound passengers, there are no inbound passengers now. So these Japanese cruise lines that provide international cruise are still waiting for the resumption of inbound travel. And the Japanese cruise lines, foreign cruise lines that provide international cruise for Japanese, it depends on the possibility of foreign one-touch cruise, which means that the cruise without destination. And we are not sure whether this, or with like only one destination, and we are not sure whether the restrictions will be lifted and anytime soon. And then finally, international cruise by foreign ship. These foreign cruise lines are also looking at the government, also closely monitoring the government's guidelines to see when the inbound passenger or inbound travel will resume. So there are a lot of uncertainties in terms of outlook. And we don't know when the number of confirmed patients will go down. And we will be fully prepared for the resumption of operation anytime soon. And Japan is having hard times now, but we still need to be prepared. And one positive news is the Yusen cruise, which operates Asuka actually signed a shipbuilding contract on the ship that weighs about 50,000 tons. And this ship aims to target the luxury cruise market. And the ship will be built by 2025. So the total number of rooms are about 385 and passenger capacity 740. So like and Asuka 2, 436 rooms and 872 passenger capacity. So please refer to this table for detailed figures. And also, well, many stakeholders in Japan cruise industry are having high hopes about this new. And this is the picture of the Japan International Cruise Committee. The JICC was inaugurated on April 9th. And JICC aims to develop the cruise industry in Japan. The shipbuilding companies and foreign cruise lines are also taking part. And underneath, you will see the companies' names. As you can see, the Japanese offices of foreign cruise lines and operators are participating in this committee. So there are 9 permanent members and 20 temporary members. So I ask for your continued interest. And JICC We are the secretariat of the JICC, Japan Cruise Research Institute. So this was all about Japan's cruise industry. Thank you for listening. Yeah, Mr. Tanaka Saburo, thank you so much. So Japan is systematically building the disaster prevention measures to resume operation of cruises. But like as it was mentioned in the presentation, due to negative market response or the challenges of preparing operation resumption of local authorities, there are difficulties even after resuming operation. And I think other regions will also have similar challenges. So we can learn a lot from Japanese experience, but still there are positive aspects to it. And Tanaka Saburo, thank you so much.
And let me move on to the fifth speaker. The fifth speaker is from the largest Asian cruise market. It's Chinese market. I'd like to invite Qiu Ling, the director of Shanghai International Cruise Business Institute. Qiu Ling is also serving as the deputy editor at the Chinese Cruise Industry Development Report and international journal titled Cruise Industry Review. And he has also involved in cruise statistics development and the National Port Standardization Committee and service protocols. And he is a professor of the Chinese Engineering Technology University, and he is also working as a vice president at the Shanghai Baosan, in charge of tourism administration, and he will touch upon Chinese cruise industry development. And the world industry has been hit hardest by the COVID-19. And in this difficult time, we need to come together and collaborate with each other for the development of the cruise industry. Thank you so much for the chair and the Secretary General and all the participants for giving me this time for this presentation. And I hope that we can return to the peak of our industry, like past couple of years. And we will need to work on hard to resume our operations. And today I'd like to talk about the development history and current situation of China's cruise industry. And the theme of my talk today is development of China's cruise industry. And today I'll touch upon 4 different subjects. First, development history and current situation of China's cruise industry. And second, new development situations of China's cruise industry. And challenges to the development of China's cruise industry under the pandemic. And lastly, the wisdom on pandemic response in China's cruise industry. First, let me talk about the development history. So it began its development in 2006 and entered the first golden decade. First, about 400,000 people. It has jumped a lot with an average annual growth rate of 4. It boasts the second largest cruise region across the world. And there are some stages of development in China's cruise industry. Second stage, which is rapid growth, 51.25%. To present, we call strategic adjustment stage. The market grows significantly. So since 2018, before it is called rapid growth stage, but now we are slowing down.
第三个方面，
So,
中国邮
the
轮
growth
港口
rate
的
has
建
slowed
设
down.
与服务在这10年过程当中持续优化。
The number
目
of
前我们一共
cruises
有15个邮轮
boarding
港
the
口，
ship
其
at
中
the
邮轮
Chinese
专用
port
码头
has
8个。
been upgraded
邮轮港口
in
总
terms
大
of the
邮轮港
cruise
口区域，
port
一个是
construction
上海
and
为核心
continuous
的长
use
三
in
角湾邮
China,
轮港口
including A
区，
cruise
第
terminals
三
and
个
the
是
total
以香
investment
港、
in
广
cruise
州、
port
深
in
圳、厦门
major
为核心的南部沿海邮
cruise
轮港口
port
区域。
regions,
邮
including
轮
the
港口
Yangtze
也进入了
Yangtze
品质
River
提升
Delta
阶
cruise
段，
port region with Shanghai
而
as the
其中
core,
上
and then
海
Bohai
作
Bay
为
cruise
中国
port
邮轮
region,
产业
and the
发展
southern
的
coast
市场的
quality
半壁江
improvement.
山，
And
在
Shanghai
政府
is
的
leading
上海
the
的邮轮
cruise
产业
market,
经历了
and
从无到
the
有，
government is providing
首次成为
significant
了亚洲
support.
接待游
The
客最多的，
Shanghai
接待了
Wusongku
471艘次。
surpassed
2019
the
年
most tourists in
200
Asia
艘
for the
次，
first time.
接
As
待
of
出境游客
29,
达到
200 international
1400
cruise
万
ships
人次。
and 40 million inbound.
邮轮
And
旅游
in the
发展的
process,
示范区，
Shanghai
是全国
was the
全国邮
China
轮质量
cruise
发展的样板。
tourism
同
development
时，上
demonstration
构
zone. For
建
the
世
first
界
time,
邮轮旅游
Shanghai
的5大
that we
中
have
心，
suggested
分别是
is
邮轮运营
that
中心和邮轮
it's
研发设计
leading
中心。
cruise
我
ports
汇报的第
in
二
the
个，
world
首先
and
一个非常瞩
global
目的一个变
cruise
化，
tourism,
就是
including
中国的
cruise
本土邮
operation
轮
center,
团队
cruise
实现
passenger
了突
center,
破性
cruise
的发
information
展。
center, cruise
在
distribution
邮轮
center,
市
and
场
cruise
发展的
R&D
前
and
10
design
年，
center.
中国的本土邮轮
And
团
let
队
me
基本
move
上
on
是
to the
民
new
营企业
developments.
参与，
There
并且
has been
都是单
breakthrough in the
船运营。
development, and
但
right
是
now
从
the
2018年
private
开始，
companies
中
are
国的
leading
本土
the
邮轮团队
development
开
for
启
the
了
cruise
新的时
industry.
代，有了国
Since
企的参与。2020年，中国的本土邮轮船
there
队
has
迎
been
来
a
了
lot
全
of
新突破。
developments and growth,
最有代表性的是中船集
especially
团、中船
such
加油轮以及地中海
CSC
号邮
Carnival
轮。
cruise shipping.
之后到10艘大型邮
The
轮将会
Atlantic
成为
cruise
中
ship
国
has
最
been
大的
delivered
国
in
际化的
in
邮轮船队，
2021.
也将在真正意义上实现。
And
五星红旗的高端
it's
邮轮团
actually
队，目前维京太阳
2020
号已
flag
经不
carriers.
期而至，发展持续推进。
And
目
it's
前我们已
actually
经
the
形
first
成了
and
邮
the
轮、邮轮旅游
Viking's
消费、
Sun
港口
is
服
the
务、
first
商贸
cruise
服
ship.
务等全配套经济，
And
实
the
现了
China is
全产
gradually
业
forming
链
a
的高产值。
leasing
大家
in
都知
operation
道，在
and
上海的
etc.
外高桥
And is
正
that
在
we
搞工程
have，
目前进展非常顺利，按照既定计划， 在
big
顺利的
project that
实
is
施
going
当中，
on
邮轮传
smoothly.
播的更新换代加快。疫情并没有，
It's a
目前根据
comfort
各大邮轮公
for
司
the
的信
Chinese
息
ships
发
in
布，
China.
未来将会有
Of
多
course,
艘旗
we
舰型
had,
邮轮入
however,
驻
the
中国。
pandemic does not
中
undermine
资
the
邮轮
confidence
也
of
正在
international
推
cruise
动。
lines in the Chinese market.
MSC 地中海邮轮在2022年，它的华
As
彩
far
号
as I
和荣耀
understand,
号将
the
共同进驻
MSC
中国沪港，开启双旗舰的市场
plans
布局。
to
皇家加勒比邮轮
launch
公司宣布，
Virtuosa and
23万
Bellissima
吨级的世界
in
最大邮轮
Chinese
海洋
in
奇迹
China
号
and
将会在
the Royal
2022年
Caribbean.
开启中国的首航。
Wonder
科
of
士
the
达邮
Sea,
轮
they
是
will
佛罗伦
launch
萨
Wonder of
号
the
将在
Seas
2022年
in
抵达
China
中
in
国。第一
2022
艘
and
五星红
Costa.
旗邮轮
The
招商
Antigen
维京邮
is
轮的维
expected
京
to
太阳
arrive in
号
China
将
in
更名为伊顿号，
2022,
打
and
开
China
高
will
品
launch
质沿海
Viking
游的邮轮
cruises.
市场。第四个特征，邮轮旅
Will
游市场
launch
复苏加
its
快。
first
疫
5-star
情
red
虽
flag
然
cruise
重
ships,
创了全球邮轮
and
市
there's
场，
accelerated
三大
recovery
邮
of
轮公司的
cruise
市值
tourism
蒸
market
发
as well.
6000亿元人民币。
Of course,
邮
the
轮公
cruise
司
market has
通
been
过
hit
融
hard
资、
by
裁
the
员、
pandemic,
减薪等等
but
方
the
式，
Chinese market,
积极应对
in
度
fact,
过这个
the
艰难
cruise
时刻。
lines
目前我们可
have
以获
actively
知的各种
responded
护航信
such
息，
pandemic
分别体
through
现在
financing,
北美市
downsizing, and
场。
reducing salaries
2021年
and
3月
other measures.
13日，美
In
国邮
North
轮公
American
司的福
market,
利号在佛罗里达首先复航。欧洲市场来看，部分邮轮公司今年
one of
5
the
月份
cruise
将陆续在
cruise
意大利、
lines
英
has
国、法国、
resumed its
西班牙、
operation, and in
希腊等地区
this
重
June,
启复
the
航计划，迎来
Caribbean,
大规模复
Bermuda,
航。
and
亚洲市
Bahamas
场，新加坡旅游局首先推
CDC
出了
will
无目的邮轮。
resume their sailings
世界
in
梦
June,
号
and in
和海洋
Asia,
量子号都已经分别在
they have
2020年的
started
11
for
月
the
和
first
12
time,
月在新加坡复航，并且都取得
started
了零
the
感染
operation
的
of
成果。
of
目前
sailings
也纷
without
纷表示会
to
延长
nowheres
在新加坡的运营时间。
with the Royal Royal
立新
Caribbean
邮轮
Contact
宣
of the
布，
Seas
双鱼星
and
号
Dream
将会
Cruises
在5月
World
13
Dream.
号在马来西亚的槟
And
城护航。
as far as I understand, they
由此可见，
plan
邮
to
轮产
extend
业历
their
经百年，
operations.
它的市场
And
韧
Star
性
Physics
在
will
这
resume
次疫
sailings
情
in
当中
Penang and
呈现出
Malaysia.
来，得到了印证。全球
Despite
邮
the
轮市
COVID
场持续向好的基本面不会因为
the
疫情而改
glue-
变。
there,
中国也终
there
将
has
依
been
旧
many
是
changes in
全
the
球邮轮市
long-term
场的重要分支，
perspective for
也
the
会
growth
是
of the
全
market
球最
in the
具
cruise
增
industry.
长潜力的新兴市
And
场。随
Chinese
着目
market
前护航
confidence
计
in
划将会
the
被提上日程，
in the market.
邮轮旅游的市场政府的双重推动下得到恢复。
There's in
第三个
China
方面，我
for
要
the
在
cruise
我们仍然要
operations.
直
That
面
is
疫
one
情
as the
所
cruise
带来的
lines are
影响，体
cooperating
现
with each
在
other.
第一，游客的
And
消费
third,
意
I will
愿在
talk
短时
about
间内可能
pandemic.
恢复，导致的
First,
各种负面
it is
信息的报
expected
道，
there
舆论的
will
夸大
be
宣传质疑，
to
带来了担忧
go
邮轮的
on
消
board.
费意愿。
There's
第二个，
tourists are
邮
worried
轮
about
旅
their
游
safety.
和其他的需求相
In
比，
case of the
相
cruise
对会比
tourism,
较慢。
unlike others.
另外，由于这个出入境政策 边境的一
So
个
if
通关的
the
影响，
situation changes
在将来
or
整个
economic
邮政
slowdown
策
or
制
changes
度
in
以及合作
immigration
关系需要
policies.
重邮轮港口的运营面临
And
大的压力。
secondly,
这个
pandemic
的经济
is that
效益受
there
损
has
严
been a
重。
great
目
pressure on
前
cruise
邮轮港口的建
those
设
ships that is
以及邮轮码
entering
头
the
的供
port
给、
for
邮
the
轮船
port.
舶的泊位都处在一个闲置状态，
And
并且还将
there's
持
cruise
续情
berthing.
况之下，
If
仍然维持着
such
巨大的运
imbalance
营
exists,
成本，
the
压面
situation
由于
has
疫情
been
的影响，
exacerbated.
邮轮航线产品的丰富
Third
性
impact
大
of the
大受阻。
COVID
邮轮旅游即使恢复，
products.
但是如果是以无目的地
It
旅
is
游为主，是
uncertain
面临
when
很
the
大困难。
international routes
另
can
外就
be
是我们虽
reopened.
然提出来发展内河邮轮，但是内河邮轮目前
And
在
the
品质化
diversity
供
of
给以及在
cruise
游船的运力方
products
面仍然体
is
现出不足，
restricted
整
by
个的航
policies.
线也比较单一，都影响了邮轮旅游整个产业的复苏发展。第四个
So
方面，邮轮
there's
产业的防疫的
the
有
cruise
效性
products
还有
are
待
not
进一步提
varied.
升。目前虽
That's
然各个
a
邮轮
big
公司积极应对，都
hindrance.
拿出了各自的邮轮防疫方案，但是首
And
先第一个邮轮方
we
案
need
需要
prevention measures.
从属地管理的层面
There
形成
are
更为有
they
效
are
落地。
caution
我们的
prevention
困
and
难
control
在于，
measures.
由于
However,
缺
there's
乏
no
国际多边合作
unified
机制，
protocols
邮
or
轮公共卫生
guidelines.
事件是一个涉及
And
多方主
there
体，它
is
包
no
括了船
international
籍国、运营
multilateral
公司、归属
cooperation
地、停靠
mechanism.
港以及员
If
工归属国等
certain
方面的
if
影响。
some
在
accidents
没有
occurs,
国际多边合
it
作机制的情
inevitably
况之下，
involves
要构
different
建一
parties.
个良好运营的邮轮产业
That
防
is
疫
why
体系困难重重。
a good
第四个方面，我要给大家
multilateral
介绍的是
international
中国邮
cooperation
轮产业疫
mechanism is
情，
needed
我们
at
有
the
哪些
moment.
经验可以
And
拿
what
出
we
来和
can
大家
learn
共
from
享
the
一下？
pandemic
我们
response
运
in
用哪些
China's
智慧
cruise
解
industry.
决了这些难题？
Now,
首先，
how
第一个，我们
China
提出来要建
wisely
立邮轮突
responded
发
to
事
the
件
pandemic.
评估和
First,
应急的预案
so
体
during
系
the。pandemic,
我们要对邮轮行
we
业的
have
突发事件
established
进
the
行
cruise
分类
emergency
管理，
assessment and
通过分
contingency
类
plan.
对它的广泛性、持续性、影响
We
性、后果
have
等等
made
进行不同的灾害
different
定位，从而
classifications
建
in
立
terms
相
of
应的不同
continuity
等
and
级的应急
extensiveness.
预案体系。第二个，我们提议应该严格控
And
制
secondly,
疫情对邮轮防疫的影响，要建立一个邮轮行业具有公信力的信息发布
we
渠道，承担
have
在旅行中
place
塑
a
造
strict
邮轮安
control
全
over
环
the
境的责
influence
任。
of public
大家
opinion
都
on
知
cruise
道，
pandemic
在
prevention.
钻石公主号发生疫
We,
情之
in
后，
order
由于
to
雨情的一个失
deliver
控，全
reliable
球范围内对
information
于钻石
to
公主号邮轮的
about the
报
cruise
道，
industry to
都
the
在极
public.
大程
We
度
have
上更
established
多的
credible
引发了
information
消费者
release
的恐惧。
channels.
毒邮轮这样的说法，对整个邮轮产业、对邮轮行业的伤
in
害是非常巨大的。所以我们呼吁，我们要通过
there has been some accidents to
合
occur
作努力
about
来通过
the
及时
positive
有
COVID
效的
cases
发布可
on
靠的官方
cruise
信
ships
息，
that has
避免民
spread
众对邮
fear
轮事
amongst
件
many
产生曲
tourists.
解。
So we have
第三个方
created
面，我们
a
提出来，我们
credible
应该形成邮轮
information
产业
release
突发
channels
事
to
件的
provide
救援策略
reliable
体
and
系，建立起
credible
统一的突发
information.
事件救援的这个
And
管理机制。比方说，我们这个核心问题提议是，一
laid
方
out
面
a
是伤病人员
strategy
救治，同时也要注重
for
非
the
伤病
cruise
人
industry
员的保护。
emergency
第二个，
rescues.
建立行业突发事件的互助同盟，寻求
We
邮轮靠泊港
effectively
口
made
组
use of
成部的
existing
救
medical
援，寻
facilities.
求邮轮运营
And
方
if
所在国
emergency
家的协
occurs,
同救援，同时
we
寻求邮
established
轮船
industry
籍国的
alliances
协
for
同救
mutual
援。
assistance.
在这个救援体系当中，港口主权国、运营方、邮
Under
轮所在
such
国以及船
system,
籍国，应该是构建出一个共同
we
面
also
对突发
sought
事件、共同应
rescue
对的
from the
应急
sovereign
体系。
state of the cruise ship's
第四个方
protocol
面，我们提
and
出
from the
呼吁政
country
府强化
of the
疫
cruise
后邮轮产
operator
业恢
and
复的
from
支
the
持。
cruise ship's country
这
of
一点上，我们可以
registration.
看到中国政府已经
And
做到了。
lastly,
第一是税
we
费的
have
减免支
we
持，
plan
第
to
二个提
strengthen
供各种各
support
样
for
的金融
post-pandemic
援助，
recovery of
通过
cruise
专项
industry.
贷款
First,
来降低企业的融
support
资
by
成
tax
本。
and
第三个
fee
提供财
reduction.
政支持。
Second,
最后
financial
呢，我们
assistance.
呼吁呢
Third,
建立一
financial
个市
support.
场恢复
And
的共同体。
lastly,
以上就
establishing
是我的汇报。
communities for
通过
market
这样的一
recovery.
个疫情的打击，带来我
With
们
this,
对
I'd like
邮
to
轮
wrap up
产
my
业，
presentation.
一方面我们很痛心，但是
COVID-19
更重要的是，我们要在这样一种
has hit
绝
the
境
cruise
下仍
industry
然保持
hardest.
希望，
What's important
在困难中
is that
仍然保持乐观。 关。
Despite the
我们相
challenges,
信邮
we
轮
still
的产业
need to
前
keep
景可期
our hope，
未来
alive
更加美好，但是需要的是我们共同的努力。谢
for
谢
the
大家。
brighter future. We need to make a lot of effort. Thank you so much.
네. 네, 치우린 부이사장님 발표 감사합니다.
Ms. Turing, thank you so much for your insightful presentation.
중국에서도 지금 크루즈
So
산업의
in
재개를
China,
위해서
they are
시스템
making a lot of effort and they are
비롯해서 다양한
establishing
움직임을 보이고
systems to
있는데요.
resume their
그 부분을
operations and
설명해
they
주셨습니다.
are providing a
그런데
lot of
한편으로는
measures.
각 국가가
On the
이런
other
시스템을
hand,
만들고 있다
different
하더라도
countries are coming up
통일된
with their
지침이
measures
부족할
to
뿐만이
resume their
아니라 이
operations. Of
각국이
course,
하고 있는 것에
we
대해서 우리가
haven't had a
재개했을 때 책임
unified measures or
여부라든지 연계
protocols,
여부들을
for
어떻게 할
example, that might
것이냐에
be
대한
related to the
이런 것들이
responsibilities,
마련되어야 하고 서로 이것을 위해서 국가 간 다져간
etc.
협력이
So
필요하다는
for that,
것도
we
또한
need
강조해
cooperation,
주셨다고
mutual
봅니다.
cooperation
크루즈
between
재개에
different
있어서는 이
countries
부분이
and authorities.
가장 앞으로는
That is one
중요한
of the,
이슈로
there will be
떠오르지
one of the
않을까라고
crucial
생각을
issues
합니다.
to
감사합니다.
further resume
자,
cruise
마지막 발표입니다, 여러분.
cruise
오늘
industry.
발표가 좀 너무 뜨거워서 길어지고 있습니다만
Yeah,
마지막
so there is a bit of a delay, but let's now listen from Hwang Jin-hwae, senior researcher of Korea Maritime Institute. He has developed policies for shipbuilding and maritime industries and studied cruise policies and inter-Korean maritime cooperation in KMI. As the chairman of Operation Committee of Korea Cruise Forum, he has made efforts to develop Korea's cruise industry. Please go on, Mr. Hwang. Yes, hello. I'm Hwang Jin-hwae from Korea Maritime Institute. Can you hear me well and you see my screen well? Yes, thank you and nice to meet you all. It has been quite a while since we haven't seen each other in person, but still it's really good to see you on Zoom. And Mr. Valery from Russia and Mr. Chiu Ling. Actually, Professor Chiu Ling, sorry. And nice to see you all. I'll try to speed up since we don't have enough time, but this is the scene you can see when you visit Yeosu, Korea. And now I will talk about current status of cruise industry in Korea. So the World Tourism Organization classifies the cruise industry as this definition. So the cruise industry combines about 25 industries, and this is the cruise business in Korea. Not many stakeholders are participating in the cruise industry yet, and there are about 50 companies participating. So there are companies that do cruise ship operation and support, run cruise tours and supply those who are engaged in supply business and terminal operation business. And let me talk about the supply and demand structure of the cruise market in Korea. And there were about 2.6 million overseas cruise tourists when the cruise industry in Korea was at a peak, but due to THAAD conflict and COVID-19, the number of overseas cruise tourists dropped dramatically. And how many are there? How many are outbound travelers still? Like the number is quite small, about like 50,000 or so. And please refer to the table on the right side. And there were a lot of like coastal cruises in Korea before, and there were about 10,000 people who enjoyed coastal cruise before. And
1,500만 명 정도 됩니다. 엄청난 숫자이고요. 1,500만 명입니다. 단순한
about like 15 million are about domestic ship passengers, and 30 million So actually, there are about 30 million domestic ship passengers and 28 million that travel overseas on coastal cruise. So I think there is a big opportunity in the Korean market. And there are no Korean cruise lines. So like we use cruise ships, foreign cruise lines. And every month, like coastal cruises operated 4 to 6 times. And so I want to say that there is a huge potential in the Korean market, but still there are not many cruise suppliers in Korea. And like usually the Chinese consumers or Chinese tourists are the main users of cruises. But if the cruise, like Chinese tourists, decline in number, then our cruise business has to go through a hard time. And the damage due to COVID-19, yeah, we conducted a research on the companies participating in the cruise business in Korea. And I think the revenue of cruise companies has been reduced dramatically. So it was about 15 million won in 2008, 21 million won in 2019, but now in 2020 it was zero, so minus 100%. And also, as you can see, the revenue of cruise travel agencies and terminal companies were also reduced by 97% and 100% respectively. And here, the employment changes, cruise companies minus 7%, cruise travel agency minus 42%, cruise terminal no change, but cruise company agency and ship supply companies minus 14%. And also the changes in the frequency of transactions, so you can see a lot of negative impact here. And no tourists in 2020, only about 3,000 cruise, and also departure about 300. So on average, 95% was reduced in terms of the number of people entering and departing cruises. So on top of that conflict, COVID-19 hit Korean cruise industry hard. And but world cruise ships have increased by 12 ships even after COVID-19. And I think it's because of high expectations on the cruise industry. This is the overseas trend, not Korean trend. So let me summarize the implications. And the Korean cruise industry has been hit hard by COVID-19, and there was a negative impression about cruise. Like the public thought that it is like they are almost 100% certain that anyone that gets on board on cruise will be infected of COVID-19, and that's a like false impression, but still like that's really serious now. And the private sector is losing capacity, and so now the industry is taking immediate measures to resume operations, and the industry is asking the government and public institutions to change the perception of the cruise industry. So cruises are usually viewed as play or leisure, but like it should be perceived as the business. And we actually, like Korea was able to develop its economy out of the ashes of war. So we believe in our resilience, and we hope that our cruise industry can be restored as soon as possible. And like I rushed myself because of time constraints. Sorry about that. And then let me talk about policy proposals for the reconstruction of Korean cruise industry. So the private sector is asking the government to provide support for the damaged cruise industry, because the government stopped receiving other cruises. That's why the industry is asking the government's action and also compensation. So we hope that the compensation can be made for the losses of the private sector and cruise industry. And next, currently, there is no specific COVID-19 protocol for the cruise industry. So we are making proposals to the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries to create this protocol, and the ministry and the research institute under it are working to create protocols. And actually, many people are like when we conducted a survey on the Korean public on whether they like, and we found that many Korean people want to travel in Korea after COVID-19 goes away. So we should be prepared and because domestic tourism will be in boom after COVID-19. And what should we be prepared for? And why do we need the protocol? Because ships will be constantly moving, and that's why we need a disease prevention protocol for the cruise industry. And here, on the right side, there is the information in Korean. So the Korean government stopped port entry of cruise ships since April last year, and this restriction has not been lifted ever since. So that's why the cruise industry is asking the government to lift this restriction and build protocol. And this protocol should include the COVID-19 quarantine system and prevention system. Especially, the quarantine is important to attract overseas cruise ships and tourists. So we will try to build the foundation together with Korea Center for Disease Prevention. And so Japan, Taiwan, and China has already created the protocol, COVID-19 protocol for cruise industry, and we would like to follow suit. And then we would also like to expand the projects. Like we want to carry out many projects to raise awareness on the cruise industry. we have to change this negative perception of cruise tourism. Only then there will be more policies introduced. So in Korea, we would like to have a small size seminars, roundtable conferences, and enhance positive news coverage. Let me move on to conclusions. So we are trying to actively respond to changes in the condition so we are trying to respond to changing conditions after COVID-19. And as the cruise market will be reshaped due to COVID-19, we would like to be prepared for these changes, which is getting a lot of expectations, statistics, and we would like to shipbuilding and operation, and the ministry is planning to encourage the cruise lines to resume operation, and when it will be done specifically, but like you, Mr. Huang, for your presentation. So not the cruise industry, and unlike unlike other countries, Korea was not a home port. It's more of like a port of call. So like that has shaped our perception on the cruise industry, and that's why the COVID-19 protocols for the cruise industry is not being formed soon. Like there is a delay in the protocol creation, but still like there is a high demand for cruise tourism in Korea. So please pay continued interests and attention to the Korean cruise industry. And we have carried out the session 1 for about 2 hours, and thank you all the speakers for your participation. And let me wrap up session 1. And I think you must have I think these presentations were really helpful for understanding the trends of Asian countries and COVID-19 responses. And I think you also have a lot of questions. So we will entertain your questions in the Q&A session after session 2. Thank you, everyone.